Welcome to this episode of the Gunman. In this video I'll be taking you through the paintwork and the preparation to get the car painted on this GL320 CDI Mercedes-Benz. So on this job we're just doing these two doors. We've also got a fender and a front bumper bar. So I'll be taking you through the preparation on the two doors, and I've left out the prep work on the bumper bar and the fender just to stop the video from getting too long. So I started off back there using just water on a rag and getting all the dirt and mud and stuff that's accumulated underneath those mouldings and stuff like that off, and then dried that off with another dry rag. We've already primed this job up. There was a filler repair there. I then put a good 4 coats of primer on, then guide coated it, which is that black stuff that you see on the panel there, and then I've got 180 grit sandpaper on that block there. So depending on the repair you may want to use 240, and depending on how much primer you've got there, but I decided because it's a black car you're going to see any ripples in it, so I wanted to get a nice amount of primer on there and block right into that primer so that we're going to get rid of any highs and lows. So after using 180, you'd want to go over it with something like 320, which is what I've got here on the orbital sander, and I have an interface pad on in between the hard pad of the sander, as not to dig into the panel too much with the hard pad. Then once I've got rid of all those 180 scratches that we did put in with the block, I've taken them out with 320, and now I've got a 500 grit pad, and I'm going around all of these edges to ensure that there's no rough spots. You can basically, if you're not sure if you've rubbed something properly, you can rub your fingers over it once you've sanded it with this sandpaper, and you'll be able to feel whether or not it's smooth or it's got some lumpy parts and rough spots in it, and if it does you can continue sanding. Now if you ever do go through to filler, you've got to be careful, and you'll probably have to re-prime it. You may be able to get away with just a little spot primer. So here I am starting to prepare the blend up. So I've just started off with a bit of grey Scotch-Brite pad. Don't get lazy and decide I'll just use a maroon or a green Scotch-Brite pad, because you'll end up seeing those sanding scratches, so it's important you use just the grey. And then next up we're sanding the blend down. I'm sanding that down with 600 grit on the orbital sander. If you're worried you may cut through, which lots of guys end up just using 800 grit, and that's fine. You just may end up finding that you go through an extra piece or two, but that's neither here or there. Most guys do use 800 grits to sand their blends down. But the way I do it is 600 grit, and then I go over the top of that by hand with 800 to take it down to the 800 grit, which is good to blend over. So the colour name on this is Obsidian Schwarz, Obsidian Black, and the colour code is 197. I end up having about an hour and a half worth of footage here, and I cut that down into about 20 minutes through editing and speeding it up. So I'm using 600 over the top of that, because remember we finished this door off with some 320 grit earlier, so that's 320 is not quite good enough to paint over. That's why I'm going over it again with 600, which is then going to be okay to paint over. So once we've got our 600 done, I've then got the high pressure air blower, and I'm blowing all that dust off, and next up I'll get one of those 800 grits soft pads and do the rest of the blends, including this door frame. Sometimes you're better off just doing parts like this by hand, because if you use the orbital sander you can end up cutting through and you'll lose your blend, and you'll have to end up putting colour over there. So now I'm just going over the top of all those 600 bits, and just over inside those door handles where you can, just to I like using these 800 grits because it lets you start fresh with you've taken out all the original orange peel from factory. So again, we'll just blow the rest of the car off again, and that's about right to go into the booth. So now we've got the car in the booth, we're going to start masking it up. So just using 36mm tape here. You could choose to use the full 2-inch tape if you want, but I prefer this tape it's sometimes actually easier to work with being that little bit smaller. So just doing back masking around here before you shut the door. So for the next part of this video will be polishing. I actually polished this car myself because it had to go the same day that I painted it, and the boss was a little bit worried that the other guys may cut through or get some denibbing marks left in the paint. So I'm a bit more experienced with doing same day turnaround jobs. So this was done on a Friday morning. I prepped this car up, painted it, and then the Friday afternoon it went and the customer picked their car up. So just inside that rear door jamb, I'm just making sure I get some paper. You could decide to use some foam tape instead to bridge that gap, which some people prefer to, but the brand of foam tape that we've got doesn't really stick very well, so I just don't even bother using it half the time. More than welcome to like, comment, share, ask questions of anything that you're not sure of. I prefer questions in public comments rather than in private inboxes, because that way other people can join in, other people can maybe answer your question and save me some time, and also other people can learn from the discussion as well, rather than me sitting there for 10 minutes trying to type out everyone's answers to their questions. It's probably better if you just make it a public on my Facebook page or on my comments on these YouTube videos. So, which brings me to another thing. If you like, I've got my Facebook page, and there's a link in each one of my video description boxes. So check it out if you haven't already checked it out, and I post a link to each one of these videos to my Facebook page as I upload them, and I also post photos, so check it out if you haven't already. So here we are, we're just putting the plastic over, and just carefully with this razor blade, get a nice sharp razor blade. It makes your job a lot easier, and just carefully that you don't press too far into it, because you don't want to hit the paint underneath or the rest of the car. So just going down and taping those spots down, making sure there's no little areas where the overspray can come underneath, because if it can, it will, and this 2-pack paint is pretty hard to take off. So if you spend a little bit more time masking, it'll actually save a lot of time when you're out in the when you're finishing the car off. So next up, we've got these blue rags, which are lint-free rags, and I'm just wiping over all of these panels with wax and grease removing solvent, otherwise known as Prepsol, silicone remover. So it's a wipe on, wipe off application for that. I like to do because I've done dry sanding, as you noticed there, I did my rear door first because that's a blend panel. I'm then doing anywhere that there is primed areas, because if you look at your rags, once you've done the primed areas, you will actually sometimes end up picking up a little bit of dust from there, and you don't want to wipe that dust over the blend area. You can end up getting a bit of a milky haze, grey haze, or whatever colour your primer is. So next up, we're using the tack cloth, which is that yellow thing in my hand, and we're just wiping down I repeat this step probably 3 times, depending. I did cut out the rest of the footage of that, but just to keep the video not too long. And I've decided just for the base coat just to also leave it in double speed, because the base coat's a pretty basic step. It's not too hard, and if you do want to see other videos where I'm using it at single speed, then you can check them out. But just for this video, just to stop it from getting too long, I've left it at double speed. So once we get up to the clear coat, I've slowed it down to normal speed though. So DeVilbiss GTI Pro with the H1 HVLP Air Cap on is what I'm using. Settings on this gun have the fluid wound right out, fan opened right up, and set it to about 25 psi or 1.7 bar metric. Also, when I'm painting a car like this, I always like to paint the sometimes not the sensors themselves, but do all those washer jets. You can see up the top of the bar there's the holes there, and there's also a few those the tow hook covers in those bars. I like to paint them all, just so that when the car goes back together, it all looks nice and shiny together. These parts here, I always like to do them. On a nice car like this, I always try to do them. So that's our first coat of base coat finished off, and this is our second coat. Being that it's black, I'm only using 2 coats to get coverage on this. You can tell by the first coat it was actually already covered, and this second coat's just to go over the entire panels. And I did do a bit of a blend on that rear door as well, but it turned out there was a little cut through, so I was able to put a bit of colour over that. And I'm blending most of this fender as well, up to the top where the hood or the bonnet goes. One little touch up the front there. It's actually got a bit of metallic in it, this colour. It's pretty easy colour matching. I left the colour matching out on this one, but same thing, if you like to see some of those kinds of vids, I've got old videos covering that kind of stuff as well, so check them out. There's also a couple of links to a couple of my other vids at the very end. If you want to hang around, there's a subscription link too. Subscribe and keep up to date with all my latest. So now we're slowing down and we're on our clear coat. I've slowed it down to normal speed. Again, I'm using the DeVilbiss GTI Pro. I've changed the air cap over for clear coat on this job. I've changed it to the T2, which is the Transtech cap, so it's not high volume, low pressure. It's a conventional cap. But the reason I changed over to this cap is because it's cooling down. When I was painting this car, the months are getting a little bit colder, so I don't want the amount of volume that you get on the panel with the HVLP, because you can end up getting runs. So HVLP, I find, is better suited to hot environments where you really need to get a lot of paint on, or else it will start drying and you'll get dry spray. So here in Perth, I find myself using the HVLP in summer and changing over to the Transtech in winter. So the settings I use on this gun is a little bit different than what I would be using in the hotter months as well. So the colder months I like to wind the fluid in a little bit so you don't get runs and you don't get too much paint on there. I've wound it into approximately 3 turns out, which is a pretty standard setting, and depending on your experience level and how comfortable you are, you can leave it set at 3 turns for hot weather as well. You may want to come out an extra half a turn just to feel how it goes. So. And have the fan open right up, which is pretty standard for most paint jobs, most painting panels. If you're doing wheels and stuff inside fiddly little areas and stuff like that, you can close the fan up a touch if you like. And I've got the pressure for clear coat a little bit higher than what I do for my base coat, because you want to get the nicer finish. If you have it the pressure too low, you can end up getting quite peely. So I like to have it set at approximately 2 bar with this gun. I've found after using this gun, I ended up getting sent out a Pro Light with the TE20, and you must use different settings with that gun. So with that TE20 on the Pro Light, I've found 25 PSI on 1.7 bar is where you want to have your air pressure, whereas with this one you want it right up to 2 bar, which is about 29 PSI. So Crystal Clear Pro Standox is what I'm using, which is actually a 3-to-1 clear. And I've then given that 5 minutes in between coats. And come back to the start again. And I'm going to slow down a little bit on my second coat as to get the paint on that little bit wetter. Get a nicer finish, because this is the final coat. There's basically never really any reason to put more than 2 coats of clear coat on when you're using 2-pack. Some people ask me, is there any instances where you would use 3? And the answer is no, because you don't want too much paint on the panel. Yeah, so 2 coats is, even if you are looking for something to cut back, unless you're going absolutely dead flat, like you want something totally dead flat, like a absolute mirror finish to look like a piece of glass, even then probably 2 coats would be enough. But if you really wanted to sound right into it, then you may want to put that extra 3rd coat on, but that's a very rare instance, and to be honest, I've never done it. There would be the occasion where you would put a 3rd coat on, but that would be to fill up if you're getting lots of bits of dust in your paintwork. If you've got heaps of small bits of dust, you can put an extra coat on, and that can actually end up filling those pieces up, so you can be burying the bits of dust, but usually 2 coats is enough. So hang around to the end. There's a quick look at the car once it's all polished up. And the next episode of this video will be uploaded next week, which will cover the polishing on this car, as I mentioned earlier. Feedback is always welcome. Anything you think I can do to improve my videos, whether or not I listen to your feedback or not, may be another thing, but it's always welcome to put your comments down there. I'm pretty happy with how this one came up. I ended up leaving out the footage of the front bar for the 2nd coat, just to stop it from getting too long. If you want to keep watching more, I've got loads more videos. Check them all out. Check out these vids if you haven't already seen them. Thanks again for watching, and this has been another Gunman production. Goodbye.